You know, when we think about the start of World War II, our minds usually jump straight to 1939. But the truth is, the seeds of that conflict were planted much, much earlier. The world of the early 1930s wasn't just in a crisis. It was on a collision course with a catastrophe. So today, we're going to look at the dominoes that fell between 1931 and 1934, the key moments that really set the world on that path to war.
Only a foolish optimist can deny the dark realities of the moment. Wow, I mean, think about that. When FDR said those words, he wasn't just talking about America's Great Depression. He was tapping into a global mood, a feeling that the entire world was teetering on a knife's edge. The old rules, the old certainties, they were gone, and something new and something really dangerous was starting to take their place.
So what was the engine behind all this global anxiety? Well, it really all boils down to one thing: the Great Depression. And we need to be really clear here. This wasn't just a stock market crash or a bad recession. No, this was a worldwide cataclysm that completely reshaped politics, fueled incredible desperation, and basically rolled out the red carpet for extremism.
Just look at this number. 66%. That's the collapse in global trade. I mean, try to wrap your head around that for a second. 2/3 of all the stuff being bought and sold between countries just vanished. This wasn't a number on a spreadsheet. This was a shockwave that hit every corner of the planet. Factories shut down, millions were thrown out of work, and governments were pushed right to the breaking point. And this one crisis basically split the world into two camps, moving in opposite directions. On one side, you had the establishment powers, the US, Britain, France. They were totally paralyzed. They're still dealing with the trauma of World War I, and now the Depression is just hammering them. But on the other side, you have these ambitious, aggressive nations, Germany, Italy, Japan. And for them, all this chaos, it wasn't a problem. It was an opportunity. Their golden chance to tear down the old system and build the empires they thought they deserved.
And Germany really became ground zero for this whole shift. By 1932, an absolutely staggering 40% of the workforce was unemployed. Just imagine that desperation. When the system fails you that completely, you don't just hope for change, you start to demand radical solutions. And there was a man named Adolf Hitler who was more than ready to offer one.
Okay, so while Germany is spiraling into its own crisis, the first major open challenge to the world order doesn't come from Europe. It comes from Asia. An ambitious and increasingly militaristic Japan decided it was time to test the system, to see just how fragile this post-war peace really was.
And the way they did it was just audacious. In 1931, you have Japanese army officers in a region of China called Manchuria who literally plant a small bomb on their own railway. Then, they immediately turn around and blame it on Chinese nationalists. And just like that, they had the excuse they needed to launch a full-scale invasion and take over the entire territory. Now, this was a huge deal. This wasn't just some border dispute. This was a direct attack on the entire idea of international law. You see, Japan, like most countries, had signed the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which was basically a global promise to not use war to solve problems. And here they were, doing exactly that, making a total mockery of that promise.
So, what did the world's supposed peacekeeper, the League of Nations, do about this blatant act of aggression? Well, they decided to send a commission to investigate. Seriously, that was the big response. And you can bet that every other aggressive nation around the world saw that weakness and took careful notes. By the time the League's commission finally finished its report and condemned the invasion, it was way too late. Japan's response was simple, and it was devastatingly effective. They just walked out. They quit the League of Nations, proving to the entire world that the institution had zero power to enforce its own rules. That first crack in the world order had just become a massive fracture.
All right, let's pivot back to Europe. Because at the exact same time Japan was defying the world in Asia, an even more sinister transformation was happening right in the heart of Germany. And it was happening at a terrifying speed.
I mean, just look at how fast this all happened. In January of 1933, Hitler is simply appointed chancellor, a normal political job. By February, the German parliament building mysteriously burns down, and he uses it as an excuse to suspend all civil rights. By March, he passes the Enabling Act, which effectively gives him dictatorial power. By summer, every other political party is outlawed, and by October, he follows Japan's playbook and pulls Germany right out of the League of Nations. German democracy was completely dismantled in less than 1 year. And the key that unlocked that whole rapid takeover was that one piece of legislation, the Enabling Act. It did one simple, horrifying thing. It allowed Hitler to pass any law he wanted without getting approval from anyone. It basically shredded the German constitution and turned the office of chancellor into a legal dictatorship almost overnight.
So, let's take stock. We have two major world powers, Germany and Japan, actively working to tear down the international system. So how did the supposed guardians of that system, the winners of World War I, respond? Well, this is where the story gets even more troubling.
On the one hand, you had Germany making its intentions crystal clear. They publicly rejected the Versailles Treaty. They started a massive secret rearmament program. They walked out of disarmament talks, and then they walked out of the League of Nations. The pattern of defiance could not have been more obvious.
And on the other side, total paralysis. In Britain and France, the memory of the last war was so horrific that their people were deeply pacifist. Their economies were in ruins from the Depression, forcing huge cuts to their militaries. And over in the United States, a powerful wave of isolationism meant the focus was entirely on problems at home.
And this inaction had very real, very tangible consequences. While the world was looking the other way, Germany's army swelled to 300,000 men. That is 3 times the limit that was set by the Treaty of Versailles. The threat was no longer theoretical. It was a physical army, being trained and equipped right under their noses.
And of course, Japan followed Germany's lead, shattering another pillar of the post-war order. They announced they were abandoning the Washington Naval Treaty, an agreement that limited the size of their navy compared to the US and Britain. Japan now demanded a navy equal in size to the world's greatest powers, signaling the end of cooperation and the beginning of a massive naval arms race.
So, let's bring it all together. By the time 1934 comes to a close, the world is a fundamentally different and much, much more dangerous place than it was just 4 years earlier. Pretty much every single structure that was designed to prevent another war had been broken.
I mean, this is the grim new reality. You've got Germany, a rearming dictatorship under Hitler's absolute control. You've got Japan, an expansionist power totally free from any naval limits. You've got Italy starting to get aggressive in Africa. The League of Nations is a proven failure. And the Allied powers? Paralyzed. The stage is well and truly set. And if you need one final chilling detail to really understand just how much had changed, this is it. In August 1934, a new law in Germany required every single soldier to swear an oath of personal loyalty, not to their country, not to a constitution, but directly to one man, Adolf Hitler. The fusion of the state, the military, and the Führer was now complete. Which leaves us with a critical and pretty heavy question. By the end of 1934, with all the guardrails for peace completely dismantled and the engines of war revving up all over the world, was it already too late? Was a Second World War no longer just a possibility, but an inevitability?